live at 2 screens. How exciting. So you can watch this on TikTok. You can watch this on YouTube. There will eventually be a Substack channel too. So you can like, pew, pew, pew. I'll be surrounded by cameras. It'll be so exciting. At some point, I'm certain I'm going to have to be like, Jay, I need you to bring me the chargers. I should probably just do that right now because apparently my printer is not printing. And I mean, I can ramble for a whole hour and tell you all of this because I know the insides and outsides of this because I've lived it. But copies, 1, print, please. And your printer needs your attention. No, it doesn't. I just refilled the ink. There we go. It's printing now. Okay, so I have the notes. This is here. We are live. No one is watching on YouTube yet. All right. Things are getting charged. So I'm really hoping no one shows up too early for the workshop today. Otherwise, I'm just going to be rambling. And they have to listen. How long is this thing? Okay, well. Where are we at, friends? Where are we at? How we doing? How we doing? Hello. So the whole point of this next hour, I'm going to try and get us in and out in a lunchtime, is talking to you about how to take whatever creative skill or knowledge that you have. It doesn't even have to be creative necessarily. Something that you can share with other people, but I want to give you the formula on how to start from scratch with nothing. I have been there. I have done that. I'm in year 8 of my brick and mortar business. I'm listening to the printer. Hold on. I think it's printing what I wanted to do, but I don't know. There. Oh. Sorry. All right. You've probably all left by now. So, okay. So the whole idea of this is I want to teach you how to make an extra $1,000 a month with whatever creative skill that you have, using the community abroad to be part of your network to help grow this very quickly. So just to give you a background, in 2014, I quit my full-time job managing a cafe. I loved everything that the cafe represented, but I worked too much for not nearly enough money. And I decided that I could just work that hard for my own thing. And my thing was art. So I quit my job. And within 6 months, I had made more than $20,000 in art sales. I had brought myself to a new city. I had found a part-time job teaching after school, and I had found my own tiny little hole-in-the-wall art studio. And with that, I kind of hyper-focused on nothing but my own creative expression and teaching creative expression to other people of all ages and all abilities. So in my part-time job, I I taught after school programming for children, mostly focused on mixed media art history. And then the odd adult program, hand building with pottery. I did a little bit of graffiti education programming. But it was really dabbling in a lot of different media. In my own personal studio, I was using it to create my own bodies of work, mostly in photography and acrylic painting. But then that quickly morphed into interactive installations. So within working in the city for 3 years, I was nominated as an emerging artist. And I had to quit my job because it was interfering with my ability to grow my own side hustle, because my side hustle was taking over my life at that point, which is like the best possible thing, but not when you can make $250 an hour and your boss who pays you $15 an hour is like, no, you can't come in late tomorrow. You know. So I quit my job, but at that point, I had been teaching my own classes on my days off in my hometown. And it grew so quickly that it was very easy to just move away from my job and start fresh here, because I already had a foundation of clients. I already had a foundation of like, I knew what I was doing and what I needed to do to grow the business. And then fast forward 8 years, we have a 3,300 square foot workshop now. We have hundreds of clients. We bring in 6 figures a year, and I work part-time, doing everything that I love. So what I really hear most often is artists are always afraid to like dig in, because it's not a culture that's supported or talked about. Everybody's like, artists are broke ass. Don't be a broke ass artist. Do anything but be a broke ass artist. But you know what? I go to job fairs. I go to youth job fairs where I set up a booth and I talk about being an artist and I tell young people about my profession, and I get stuck between other professionals, you know? So like my favorite story was I was stuck between people who represented the Canadian government on one side of me, and then I had an electric engineer on this side of me. And I was telling the kids about how I can make $250 in an hour. And if I only do that a couple days a week, I'm set, right? And at the end of the day, the engineer came up to me and he said, you know, you make more money than I do. And I would never, ever tell a creative person to pursue a creative job because it's so risky. He's like, but listening to you talk, it's not risky. It's not risky. It's like starting a business is risky. But like this isn't risky at all, because you can work full-time, you can work part-time, you can do this once a week and make $1,000 a month. You can do this twice a week and do, $2,000 a month. But you can replicate this, and that's the whole point of this, is that I've got this down to a formula. And I just want to explain how to walk you through the thought process, because if you've never done anything but art, like I literally started with no real business experience. So you got to start with you, and you got to start with what you know or what you love the most. Okay. Forcing yourself to teach something that you're not really excited to teach is just going to make it hard for you to grow as you move forward. So just pick something that you love doing, and something that you know well enough that you could talk about it and explain it step by step as if I was blind. I've never been to this planet and I know nothing about any of the tools and materials you're going to teach me. You have to assume. Just assume that the people you're teaching know absolutely nothing, while also assuming that the people that you're teaching know everything about their sense of beauty. You just have to be able to trust their impression of what that is, which is the hardest thing to train, because I can't train you to be ready for anything unless you are confident in your own skills. Okay. So I just want to prattle off an example of some things, and I want to talk about how easy some of these things are and how some of these are possible, but it's a lot more to bite off to start with. Okay. So things that are really easy, like watercolor illustration and cartooning. If you can hold a pencil and draw dynamic things, it could be just about anything, and get yourself some dry palette watercolor palettes. You can reuse them. It is by far the cheapest, most financially lucrative form of teaching art classes is using those watercolor basics. Depending on your skills and what your goals are, you want to pick your medium and your type of medium for what works best for your client. So like, I'm not going to give my 5-year-old students professional watercolor paint. Why would I? That's a giant waste of money, and they're not really going to do anything different with it than they would if I gave them the primary water-based watercolor garbage. Okay? Because I miss you. Ew. So what I'm going to, hello, Emily, hello, boom. So, hello. So, start with watercolor basics, okay? Acrylic painting is where I started, because acrylic is just as easy, but you can't reuse the supplies, obviously. You know what I mean? If you want to grow from there, the other one that's rather cheap is like a kids craft club. I personally have never pursued a kids craft club. I don't like crafting. I don't want to use glue guns. I don't want to use a bunch of recycled materials for the most part. I don't want to do a whole bunch of things to make a thing. I kind of like hyper focusing on one thing so that I can teach skills. But if that's what you're into, you can use the same thing. Thank you, Nick. This is one of those growing pains where I have no idea how to fix that right now, and I'm not going to let it ruin my focus more than it already has. Okay, so you got to know what you're going to do. So, for example, with an acrylic painting class or a watercolor painting class, the approach is the same, but a little different. So with a watercolor class, I'm going to walk a kid through a cartoon, and I tried to bring my older sketchbook. So I'm not going to, there's some ethics involved with this, because you can, oh, wow, that scared the heck out of me. I got, thank you. Thank you. Whew, I didn't know it makes noises. Okay, this is a really cute example. So you can teach people how to draw just about anything. So during the pandemic, I started making $100 an hour. I started making $100 an hour teaching pencil drawing from my home to people hours away from me. And it started out as, we are going to draw animals. So this is from a different class where we hyper focused on one specific animal, which was a pug. But you can play around with teaching different things. So with the kids, we walked them through different animals. With my adult classes online, we started doing cartoons. They could choose anything, because I can draw just about anything. And if I can't, this is the perfect way to like join. Oh, thank you, Emily. The cartoons are super easy, because you can have your live people, and just they can give you suggestions in the comment section, and you can reply and pick and choose your favorite. From there, we went to celebrity portraits, which pushed me out of my comfort zone, but it's a really good practice. We usually got like maybe 3 or 4 done in an hour. From there, I was tired of being inside all the time. So I started going for walks and taking them to local places and being like, my camera and I are sitting in front of this beautiful stage, and we're going to learn how to draw the stage, or we're going to learn the library, or we're going to go to the lighthouse. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the lighthouse, and then we're going to draw it. And that's what I did during the pandemic. And then I road tripped up to Thunder Bay. So I was getting paid $100 an hour to live in my car, see the most beautiful parts of Ontario, and teach people how to draw the things that I was seeing and doing, which was like super, super cool. You can still do that. It was just highly sought after during the pandemic. And I mean, now that things are monetized and you can do things a little differently online, you can probably make some money doing that. With those classes, because it was online, the requirement that I basically had to teach assuming that people didn't have anything but paper and a drawing tool. So there was no watercolor involved. But essentially what I would do with the children's class is we would walk them through like 40 minutes of drawing heavy activities. Yeah, see, we got elephants, pugs. Let's see here right now. This was not a very drawing heavy sketchbook year, so I mean, some of these are my sketches, but they're not what I would teach. But the idea is that after they have drawn all of their little sketches and doodles, this is just a prototype for one of my projects. Once they finish all their sketches and doodles, you give them the last 20 minutes of class to paint them in. You don't even have to give them any instruction when they're small. When they're big, you just have to walk them through that instruction. And normally, I start giving people more time once they hit about 12. So children, they can finish just about anything in 45 minutes to an hour. The smaller they are, the faster they move, the more confident they are. The older people get, the slower they are going to move, the more life has told them that they deserve to be in a box and their idea of beauty is not important to the world. So you have to kind of push them out of their comfort zones, and it usually takes a little bit longer, and it takes a little bit longer to troubleshoot. So with acrylic painting, okay, you get your canvas, you get all your brushes and tools. This is going to take a little bit of an investment, but it will immediately return. And I always tell people, don't buy the tools until you have the registration. Simple as that. Right? You're like, I don't want to buy all these tools and have nobody show up. Well, then don't buy them till people have purchased tickets, because that's rule number one. Take their money before the class starts and make very clear policies to make sure that they can't come back at you the day of and say, well, I'm flaking out. I'm not coming and I'd like my money back. Nope, you can't. Sorry, that's our policy. Or you get a credit, you don't get your money back, and you can come to my next class and here's all the dates. Please make sure you sign up, in advance. So once you've got your subject, the next thing is start thinking about how you can work with that subject in multiple ways. So when I teach classes, so almost all of our classes, whether it's for kids, teens, or adults, we pick a medium and then we replicate the lesson of that medium every single week, teaching a completely different project. Okay, so with stained glass, we teach you the basics of stained glass, but you do a different project every week. Every single project has a completely different style and form and requires different skills to make sure that it looks good. It'll teach you different things. So the idea is that you push your students into trying new things and approaching creativity with the same medium different ways, because that's going to allow them to grow in very slow, measurable ways that isn't uncomfortable. Like, as artists, we're used to being uncomfortable with art. The average person doesn't want to be uncomfortable at all. They would like to just have a really great time and feel very confident in everything that is happening, even if they've never had any experience and they expect perfection. Okay. So beginner friendly is really important. And I have grown my students, like my regular students, they have grown in their confidence so that I can start teaching more elaborate classes, which keeps my interest a little bit more. But when I work with a group that isn't a group of regulars, say like a private group comes in, they quite often go right back to the most simple, most basic demos because they can't even fathom doing something beyond basic. So you have to get into the mindset of non-artistic people and understand that they can't even imagine how to draw what you're going to paint, let alone illustrate it and make it look beautiful and blend the colors and make everything look, you know. So you got to know yourself. I just did this giant lecture in front of like 200 CYWs last week. And the biggest message was like, if you don't know yourself and you don't know how to ground yourself and you don't know how to self-reflect on your reactions to other people, you're going to have a really hard time teaching. So like make grounding a practice that you do before you actually go into a class and be very aware of your own mindset. There's going to be days where you're going to have to suck it up and teach it anyways. But you have to do it in a way where you're not flinging your shit onto your customers because they're coming to you for a relaxing good time and they will pick up on that energy. And if you can just be vulnerable enough to joke with them when things get difficult, it is so much easier to manage. So much easier. Like I literally had a student it was pre-pandemic. We had 60 behavioral therapists in a training seminar in a gigantic ballroom. And everyone was painting a sunset with a seashore and a lighthouse. And they were all really beautiful except for this one woman's. And it was just rigid. The only word I can use is rigid. And she was struggling. And I finally said to her, you know, I've given you a few tips and tricks and you're still not having a good time. What's going on? And she's like, I just don't get it. Everyone else's looks good. Mine doesn't look good. I can't figure out what's going wrong. Like she was stressed out. She was miserable. So I said, well, I'm just going to stand here and I'm just going to watch you and I'm going to just see if I can see what's going on. And then I'll see if I can help. Usually I ask questions, but at this point we'd asked all the questions and she didn't get any help. So I simply said, I watched her and I instantly knew she was her whole painting was rigid because she was rigid. Like she was holding her brush like it was made of lead and like there was no flow, there was no movement. And I literally looked at her and I said, ma'am, you need to loosen up. Like in all honesty, with the most kindness, with no judgment, you got to loosen up. And I literally told her if she's brave enough to stand up and shake. And she did. And it did loosen her up. But I mean, you don't have to stand up. You just shake it off, right? So you have to find ways to be able to respond to the negative energy in the room because it's very easy to teach a room of people who are really excited to paint and are all very, very enthusiastic about their own abilities. 70% of the time, that is not the case. You're getting people who are afraid, who don't believe in their abilities. They will question every single step that they do, even if it looks absolutely brilliant. So you just have to really be able to troubleshoot that in ways that doesn't minimize how they feel, but also, you know, inspires them, or makes them stop caring. Okay. So we've got, okay, what I'm teaching is single classes. If you want to break this down, you can use the same formula and make a little bit more money having the same group of people come back week to week to week if you can do that. In my community, I find that it isn't very popular. We don't get a lot of commitments. So what we're going to do when we think about this is we're only doing one project in 1 hour if it's with children. We're going to do one project in 2 hours if it's adults. And if you really want to spread yourself out in the name of value, 2.5 hours might be easier. Sometimes people need that extra time. And if you just schedule it into your map, then that's fine. Okay. By the end of your class, the person will have walked themselves through an entire project and will be taking home the thing that they made with them at the end of the day. That's incredibly tangible. It's a valuable experience. And your number one job, okay, which is hard to do during the class, but afterwards it's pretty easy. You got to be the photographer. You got to be the one taking pictures with people with their proud masterpiece, going, look at what I've done. Because that's your best marketing. That's 100% your best marketing opportunity by all. So what I'm suggesting is breaking down the price of things. So I want to talk about the math first, and then I'll kind of explain. Charge $25 a person for a kids class. If you're working with Canvas, drop it to 15 to 20 if you're doing watercolor, simply because you want to build a base of people who are more than willing to come multiple times. And like, really, if you do this right and you go get the really nice dry watercolor palettes, you can reuse them hundreds of times. Okay. I even have a video on YouTube where I teach you how to clean them afterwards so they look really nice and they don't look gross after a child uses them. If you're doing an adult class that's 2 hours, charge $35. That's very fair. Ultimately, the cost per person should equal 50% of the cost of materials. So when I teach a class, okay, if I'm making a class for 10 people, my materials are going to cost me $25 to $50 of $350. Okay, because an adult class is $35 times 10 is $350. My materials, I'm looking at, that much money. And then from there, the rest is profit, unless you have to pay rent. Okay. And this is like a secret. It's not a secret. It's very obvious, but right now it's going to be your best friend, because this is, like I mentioned earlier in the video, there was a time and a place where doing things virtually during the pandemic really elevated your opportunities, because that's what everybody was looking for. Right now, restaurants and cafe owners and community owners are looking for reasons to bring customers in, keep them in their space, and find ways to make them spend money. What a great way to keep people in a restaurant, an eatery, or a community space by entertaining them in your space, okay? So when I started, I went to the local cafe and I said, what is it going to cost me to rent your room? They said, nothing. Perfect. So I started taking over one night a week, 1 hour. I'd set up for a half an hour. I'd do 1 hour kids class. It cleaned up in like 15 minutes. There we go. $250 in an hour. I spent like $25 on materials, so $225 in my pocket after 1 hour. Then when things started to grow, essentially what started happening was I had the one kids class a week, and that filled almost immediately as soon as they were announced. Then I started a second kids class, so you could come to the early class for the younger age group that was like 5 to 6. And then we had like a 7 to 8 age group, and they kind of like then took over. So then I was teaching 2 hours a week, which was like $500 a week. And then the parents were like, well, this is so much fun and we would really like to do it. But I didn't feel very passionate about teaching adults. So I only did that once a month. And then it was so popular that I had to do it every other week because there was just so much demand. So all of a sudden, I was making $2,000 a month running 2 kids classes a week, plus another like $700 doing the 2 adult workshops a month. So I was making $2,700 in my side hustle in 8 hours. 8 hours. Okay. Now, the really cool thing is that if you organize this in seasons, so right now we're at the end of the winter season. If you do your homework, you could launch something within the next 2 weeks and be ready to start classes in April. Okay. Which is also Easter, which is the absolutely most perfect way to like get people excited, because the best way to get people together is find a holiday and teach something around that holiday. Okay. You can do a children's class. You can do an adult class. You could even do a family class if you have the patience to deal with facilitating parents working with their children. I do them all. You can easily organize one of each if you want to. Okay. So when you're thinking about finding a space, okay, do you have a favorite local restaurant or coffee shop? Okay. If that's not available to you, think about other places like your library. Okay. Community spaces that already have traffic, that are going to be open to like collaborating with you instead of charging you money. Because then all of a sudden, if you're renting a space, there's nothing wrong with that. But then you now have a little bit of overhead that you have to cover, which is now cutting into your bottom line. So, what you want to think about, these are all examples. Yeah, there we go. I did some thinking here for you. So this is where Easter poetry, right? Yeah, you could do an Easter poetry workshop. Okay, so I'm gonna talk with my list here of different places, and I'm gonna sort of speak to what's available in my community locally and regionally, and sort of touch base on how I've utilized these spaces in the past. Okay, so you take what works for you, if any of them work for you. So I first started with the community space at the cafe. Okay. If you want to go the extra mile to work with your eatery partner, try to price in a kid's snack with the cost. So like if you're going to charge $25 for a class, put it up to 30 and they get a cookie and a juice. Okay. Try to price it out so they get a little bit of a deal. It might mean taking in like, it might mean taking in or taking a small hit. So like if you want to charge $30 and they get a juice and a cookie or a juice and a snack, that's valuable to the parent because now all of a sudden they are not having to like rush around, feed them, and then take them to classes. Adults don't care so much about snacks, but they like drinks. Okay. So if you're going to do a workshop at a place that's licensed, the easiest way to bring people in is say, well, you can register for $40. Let me see if I can do that, Emily. I'll have to figure that out. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see a quick to touch option, but I will learn next time because I think I have to go into the studio to do that. Yeah. Thank you, my friend. That was not expected. You know, you don't expect a bunch of weirdos to jump into your video. So with the cafe, I was able to like hop in and get snacks for the kids. With something like a brewery, you just say, okay, I want $35 for my activity. Is a beer $5? Great. We're going to charge $40. They get one drink when they get here. And then ideally they always want at least one more. Okay. Brewery. So community, like community cafes, breweries, and restaurants are your top like 3 best locations if you're going to do something for free and like create a community around creativity. Other places, libraries, art galleries. We don't have an art gallery locally. And quite often, sometimes your art galleries have different structures, but it's worth checking out because sometimes sometimes you find that art galleries or institutions like that, they won't allow you to rent out their space for free. But you know what they will do? They will take your application and they will give you like a residency essentially. So what they do is they say, oh, well, you pitch us an idea for a series or a workshop. So you pitch them their idea. They say, we love it. And then quite often they will handle registration for you and give you the space. And then you just show up and teach it on behalf of them. Okay, which is another lucrative way to get in. You can do this with like art galleries, sometimes libraries, and this is also one of those opportunities for like festivals and events, or even trade shows. Locally, no one wants to pay me to come to their trade show, but in the city, I don't pay to be a vendor at trade shows. They pay me to be there as an entertainer, and I still set up a display to make money and sell my products because I am an entertainer and I have skills that are valuable, and I am not paying you to share them with your customers. You have to pay me to be there, or your customers have to pay me to be there, one way or the other. So trade shows, events, and then schools. Now, this isn't always lucrative, but if you are already a parent of a child in a school institution, or it's not for me, churches, that is also a really great community space to be able to utilize and work together. And again, if you're part of that community, they're very, very likely to support you and work together. And then boom, it's very easy to market because you already have this audience of people who knows who you are and hopefully wants to support you because they're part of your community. The big thing when you're approaching any of your venues, so I just kind of like kept this really simple. So you need to pitch this idea to the venue, and you don't want to go elaborate. Okay, this isn't a TED Talk. You're not going on Dragon's Den. You just need to share with them what you are offering, the program, how you're bringing foot traffic to their business, and then the community engagement that will overflow from this little partnership. So like it could be as simple as, hi, I'm an artist or creative or whatever you want to call yourself in the community. I'm looking to run a small workshop. It would bring blank to blank number of participants into your space for a 1 or 2 hour class. Would you be open to hosting something like that in a collaborative partnership? Don't say rent. Let them ask you for rent if that's the case. And if they do ask you for rent, you have 2 choices. You can either decide that it's really important for you to partner with them and you're happy to invest in them in order to grow this business. Or you can say, I really appreciate that, but I am going to do a little bit more research because I am just starting out and I want to make sure that what I'm doing isn't financially overwhelming me, if that makes sense. Okay. So other things that you can discuss or things that you can consider before walking up to a venue or contacting them by email or giving them a call. Free space is ideal, but you can talk about a revenue split. Personally, I don't take a revenue split with any of my partners ever. There are a couple places that I do a flat rental fee, but it's worth it. One being this Mother's Day, I'm going to host not 1, but 2 watercolor picnics at Task Tulip Farm in Niagara-on-the-Lake. It's the largest tulip farm in all of Canada. My flat rate rental allows me to bring in individuals onto their farm. Each individual gets to pick a bouquet of 10 tulips, and we're going to set up this luxe picnic and then walk them through a 1 hour watercolor project. But that's valuable to me because people don't care who I am or what the activity is. They just want to have an Instagrammable photo in this beautiful place doing something really cool. And I just so happen to be the person teaching it. So I'm going to make $1,000 an hour for 2 hours. I'm going to spend more time getting to the venue and driving home from the venue than I will teaching. I'm going to spend like 4 hours in the car for 2 hours of teaching. But 6 hours and I'm at $2,000 ahead. And that's after paying the flat rental fee. Okay, that's profit. So you also have to talk about revenue or like your venue requirements. Are you bringing tables and chairs? Or are they providing tables and chairs? This is one of the big ones that like got me a little, this pushed me to get my own space because essentially things grew to the point where I was doing my classes weekly. And then all of the families that were coming to my paint classes started booking me for their kids' birthdays and their like hangout girls' nights in their garage. So all of a sudden, now I'm working on my day off during the week. I'm having to book time off on weekends to go do these other private events, which you can charge more because they're private. Or you can charge less in the name of, I don't have to do the marketing, whatever is good for you. I like to do that for my customers because it just means they book me with private events more often and I have to do less marketing more often. So when I was working at the cafe, it started becoming an issue because I would show up to teach my class and they didn't have enough tables and chairs for me anymore. And even though it was pre-rented and everything was arranged and they knew I was coming to the space and the space was reserved, it was like, we rented out some tables or, oh, we have something special going on and we needed this table. Or so it just became problematic for me in order to run a consistent experience for my students. And that's kind of when I made the leap to having my own space, which is its own hilarious little story. But I want to talk about marketing before we kind of go any further. We've got about 15 minutes. I don't want to waste anybody's time. But if you have any questions, this is a good chance to like drop them in the comments now because I can respond to them after I'm finished and without having to like wait for them to come in. Woo! Oh, happy Friday. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's like this, you hear a giant like slap hammer sound. How exciting. So with marketing, to be totally honest, the marketing end of things is challenging and more work than teaching. So the easier you can make it for people to get into your classes, the less work you have to do on the marketing end. So when you're ready to market, you have to know that you have a clear and step-by-step instruction. You know, you have to be confident in order to be able to maintain like a relaxed environment and be confident in being able to encourage success and problem solve at the end of the class so that they are happy with what they've done. Okay. There we go. Sorry for the interruption, friends. So if you know all of those things, it's very easy for you to start marketing. But my suggestion to you is do what I'm doing right now. Go live, pretend to teach a class live. I would say teach a class and pretend you're teaching it, but the idea of being perceived like this, don't even worry about the comments. Just go live and practice knowing that you are teaching an audience. People are watching you, being aware of how you're teaching, and you know, you can try to pace things. Okay. So the video is meant to help pace you, but it also allows you to go back and watch what you're doing. So you can improve either the flow or correct yourself or make notes on the project so that you can kind of make things a little bit easier to teach, or make notes on where to expect trouble because you had trouble yourself. And then now all of a sudden you have your own teaching resource that you can go back on and reflect on. But more importantly, all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of screenshots that you can use in your marketing, either to show the process of the artwork that you're creating or just give a sense of your personality while you're teaching. And if you really want to go into like the digital end of things, you can just clip all of that footage into simple little reels, 10-second reels, and you can share those. So you don't even have to teach a class first. You don't even have to go anywhere. You can use TikTok, you can use YouTube, you can use whatever platform you want to just go live and teach an imaginary class to get the footage, to get the practice, to get the confidence, and allow yourself to just feel what it feels like before you're in front of a room of people. Once you've got that down pat, it's up to you to decide how frequent you want to do this. So I was pitching this little talk today with the idea that you can make an extra $1,000 a month. That's based on the idea that you're charging $25 per person for 10 students for a 1-hour class. Okay. But you can also charge $35 per person to $45 per person or more for a 2-hour class for adults. Okay. So that's bringing in more money. And then really, if you can just do it on a weekly basis at the same time at the same place, it makes everything so much easier because your guests will literally build their schedule and their life around your workshop so that they can come as often as they want. Okay. There's a couple things that I'm just going to troubleshoot and talk to you a little bit about because there's a lot of noise on the internet when it comes to marketing. So your best market and your best way to get the word out is direct face-to-face communication with people. That's your friends, your neighbors, your school community, your church community, your business community. Fun fact, your local bank will let you put up your business posters in their bank because they are invested in your success. Okay, that's a really good example. So you can also explore bulletin boards. So in my community, hello, hi, come on in. Just 1 second, I'll get Jay for you. Table, how are you doing? So I joke my neighborhood here is kind of like being in the 90s. We don't have a unifying publication that keeps everybody connected, and we don't have a unifying social presence online that keeps everybody connected. There's something developing right now, which is really beautiful, but for the most part, word of mouth works best, the bulletin boards best. The other thing to do though, I don't have an example with me. Well, I do. So if you're partnering with a venue, they're vested in your success. So you're going to ask them, do you mind if you put a poster up? Do you mind if we put something on tables? Do you mind if we put something in your windows? So when I do a series, this is like an old crusty poster that's been in. Oh, this is just an old crusty poster that's been in my window for 3 months. So it's a little gross. But essentially, this would go in the window front. I have my own printer, so it's way cheaper to print. So I would just put this in the window of the business. But then I teach so many classes now that I've started making program zines. So I make all of the posters into one tiny little booklet. So now if you're a parent, I can just hand this to you and you are literally getting information about 8 programs on one page and all of it fits in your purse, which is even more convenient. And just to kind of show you, I'll cover the name, but like this mom literally just, she struggles with the internet. So she just circled all the classes and I handled registration for her, connected to her email. When I started doing registration, it was word of mouth, and I literally kept a list in my sketchbook, and that got to be a little much as soon as we started doing more than one class a week. So I just used a free Google form. I had a free Google form, one for each class. I would cut it off and use Facebook as a way to communicate with the community that, oh, we're full, which brings me to social media. Don't give the platforms your money in terms of like buying ads. You're going to make these posters and you're going to share them in your community Facebook groups. Okay. If they don't allow businesses, find your business community Facebook group, drop it there. The other place you're going to look if you're teaching for kids is you're going to look for the childcare and family and school community Facebook groups. That's going to be place number one to find all your people. Sometimes your community spaces will allow you to put up posters. So like the local library, if there's an art gallery, find all of your local bulletin boards and put up posters. While you're doing this though, so the key to having the online registration, if you use something like a Google form, all of a sudden you can take those emails and start sending the parents updates as soon as they're available. So you may not have a brick and mortar business, but now you have a newsletter list. That's huge, okay? Because all of a sudden, if you've got a newsletter list, not only can they contact you about the kids' classes, but they have a direct line to you when they want to book you for an adult program or a birthday party or, okay, so that direct line and that convenience of reaching out is really, really important. I personally don't use Eventbrite, but you can. I have a registration system integrated into my website, and previous to that, I simply used the online Google form and an e-transfer or cash at the event. I've since devolved to require payment in advance, so you have to pay me either coming into my studio and giving me a payment beforehand or using our online system to pay. You can get a card reader, but like it's not, there's so many options to pay, especially in Canada. There's so many options to pay that you don't really have to figure out the cost. Because like a good card reader is a good $300 brand new. And they're just going to upgrade it on you anyways. So instead of using that, sometimes you can actually just get an app that will take payment through your tap system on your phone. So look into that before you buy an actual card reader. Now, I only have a couple more minutes of things that I want to talk about. The last little thing is taking all of this and considering doing this online in two different ways. If you want to do a little bit of extra work and create sort of like an online shop for yourself or give yourself an opportunity to create products, during the pandemic, I was creating activity kits. So I would personally box up all the tools and materials for something, and then I would get you to pick it up or I would ship it to you. And then I would have a pre-recorded video on YouTube. So a lot of the tutorials you see that I have on YouTube, they were designed specifically for activity boxes that you could then play around with. Alternatively, you can kind of do what I'm currently doing. You can just start recording your classes. Don't record your students. That's not what they're there for. But you can teach in a way where the camera is directed at you. You may walk off camera every now and again, but it doesn't matter. But again, you can use that to reflect and review and make sure that you're improving class to class. But you can also use this for content, and you can use it to just share and build an online following. And then you can start doing lives online or building an online course or an online, platform, so you can educate people through that way without even having to leave your house. It's a lot more work. That's kind of where I'm at in this stage. Is I live in a really small town, and the market here is limited, and I'm a little bit more limited than I used to be. after an injury. So I can't necessarily travel as well as I used to. So finding ways to branch out through the online space has kind of been my goal because it's more physically accessible to me. So I did not see any questions come in. I saw a lot of gross messages that I blocked and deleted. Yay. But I want to, again, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, feedback, this is the time to share it. Ooh, yeah. Let me hear it. Let me hear it. Hello. So what I want to challenge you to do is put together a plan in the next 7 days. Okay. Simply because that's going to push you to take this seriously and do something about the knowledge I just handed over before it gets turned into a faded memory. And if you have any residual excitement bubbling up inside of you, use it to motivate you. So I'm just going to reiterate what you got to do here. I'm not going to go into all the details, but okay. Okay, so you got to choose what you want to teach. Okay, know it inside and out. Make sure it's teachable within an hour or 2 hours. Oh, well, it's recorded, so I'll find a way to get it, and I will share it with you any way I can, okay? So make sure it's teachable. Okay, make sure that the math adds up. So structuring it properly so that you can repeat the same experience in different ways over and over again, and people can just assume they know what the price is. Okay, find your venue that's willing to invest in your success by co-creating the event and not expecting you to pay rent. You'll have to rewatch the live if you want to see some of the ways that you can pitch this. Make sure that you pitch your event. And then once you've pitched this event and it's go time, do one live practice class on an online platform like this, because that's going to give you a chance to practice, to look back and reflect and improve your teaching method, and also give you a lot of content that you can use for sharing on social media. Okay. Okay, so my final little tidbit. I guess I'm arriving. My final, yes, okay. I'll figure out a way to get this uploaded, and I'll send a link to the upload to anybody that's interested. Okay, so a couple things to keep in mind, or at least I did. Don't be sad if your first class doesn't fill. Don't even be sad if your first class doesn't half fill, because you should focus on the fact that there are people in front of you at a table who chose to show up for you. So you got to show up for them 100%. And what's really magical about that is that they will come back and they will bring friends, and they will be the best marketing people that you have. You don't have to pay happy customers to share their joy. And if their art is nice, that just becomes an even better way to showcase it, because they'll be the ones on social media being like, oh my gosh, look. And you know what people like more than, looking at you promoting yourself is seeing other people promoting you for you, because it's so much more authentic. So I'm going to leave everybody with that. Thank you all for tuning in. If there's any other questions, please feel free to comment before I end the live. I do kind of want to reiterate a few other things that I offer. On Saturday, I share a new grounding activity that you can use to either tap into your creative expression or use as a foundation for something creative. whether it's a writing prompt, you can use it as an artistic prompt, or just a journaling prompt. But I guess today is the 6th. So I can only take on one-on-one client for the month of March. But if you don't get in touch with me by tomorrow, it's game over. Essentially, that's 4 weeks of coaching to help you build and structure your class and get it launched with my help. I can only take on one this month, and my ability to take on more than that gets pretty limited as we get closer to summer, because my summer gets a little bit crazy. Alternatively, I have a few more ideas for some more classes like this. For example, this is sort of my creative roadmap. No, that's not the creative roadmap. It looks similar to that. That's my new sketchbook. That's my I'm learning something new roadmap. This is kind of a visualization of everything that I'm doing in the world right now and how they all interrelate and how I can make them better support each other. Okay. So for example, I have all these partners. Some of those partners are venue and locations with their own gift shops. So for example, I'm going to start putting products in their gift shops this year. That's a simple cross promotion that all of a sudden raises awareness, improves sales. Another way of doing this is taking the content that I'm making here and I'm just sharing it on different platforms. I'm probably going to cut it up, use it into different videos. I can also take this and turn it into a downloadable curriculum that you can download for, you know what I mean? So that's the goal, is from here, I'm going to start doing these lives. And then if you would like more of a downloadable content, I'm going to have a little online shop where you can just do a little tiny bit of like a worksheet essentially for like $1.99. I think that's affordable. I think that's fair. If you take what you've learned in this workshop and you take what you learn on that, and you combine everything, you have a very lucrative roadmap to starting your own business. And coming from someone who had almost no business experience 8 years later, it's a lot easier to start with the knowledge and do it properly the right way. So thank you for your time. I hope everyone had a inspiring lunch break with me. And if you have any questions or you're interested in some one-on-one coaching, don't hesitate to reach out. And if you would like to give me a little tip, you can hit the link in my bio. Tip the artist. It's just an open contribution. You can tip 50 cents. You can tip $500. I don't care. It would be really nice if those rude people in the comments that I had to block and mute would, you know, drop a filthy $500 tip in my... Yeah, but hey, one day. In the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful Friday, and I will see you tomorrow for part 4 of the Creative Reckoning. Thank you much. Thank you much.
Ask another